I never imagined my grandmother's will reading would feel like a public execution. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of leather and dust, the kind of place where legacies are sealed and families either come together or more often fall apart. My cousins filled the long mahogany table, whispering excitedly, their designer watches flashing in the light. They were already dreaming of yachts, penthouses, and luxury cars before the papers were even read. And then there was me, the family disappointment. I could feel their eyes on me, their smirks sharp as knives. I had no mansion, no six-figure job, no glamorous spouse. To them, I was proof of failure. And today I was about to be reminded of it in front of everyone. The lawyer cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and began. To my beloved grandchildren, he read, I leave what is dearest to me. One by one the numbers rolled out. My cousin Rachel. The Florida beachfront properties, valued at $12 million. Her brother David. The penthouse in Miami and 2 yachts, collectively worth $8 million. Another cousin. The ranch estate, along with investments totaling $15 million. Each announcement landed like a hammer blow, and the room buzzed with greedy delight. Papers shuffled, gasps of joy filled the air, and self-satisfied smiles widened. And then my name. The lawyer paused, as though almost embarrassed to say it aloud. To my grandchild, he hesitated. I leave my old sewing machine. A silence fell. Then came the laughter. Rachel nearly choked trying to suppress her giggle. David smirked openly, leaning back in his chair. Fitting for the family disappointment, he said, his voice slicing through the room like a blade. I sat frozen, my cheeks burning. The humiliation was worse than the inheritance itself. I wanted to stand, to shout, to demand answers, but the weight of their mockery pinned me to my chair. By the time I stumbled out of that office, clutching nothing but the keys to pick up an ancient sewing machine, my cousins were already planning vacations. Their laughter followed me out the door, echoing in my ears like a curse. That night I dragged the sewing machine into my small apartment, setting it down with a thud. It looked almost new, pristine, too clean for something that had supposedly been hers for decades. I ran my hand along the polished metal, searching for some kind of meaning. Why me? Why this? That's when I noticed it. The fabric tray. A faint ridge along the edge, as if it had been lifted before. My heart quickened, pulled it up, and there, folded neatly underneath, was a handwritten note. My grandmother's shaky script stared back at me. Look where the roses never bloom. The laughter of my cousins echoed again in my mind. But now it sounded different. Because in that moment I realized, my grandmother hadn't left me scraps. She'd left me a secret. And secrets are far more powerful than fortunes. I stared at the note until the words blurred. Look where the roses never bloom. It felt less like a clue and more like a whisper from my grandmother herself. She wasn't a woman who wasted words. Every sentence she ever spoke carried a weight, a meaning hidden beneath the surface. But what did this mean? The first thought that came to mind was her garden. She had loved roses. Her backyard had been full of them. Bright red, soft pink, and snow white. As a child, I used to watch her prune them carefully, humming quietly to herself. But roses never bloom? That was the opposite of what I remembered. I sat back trying to recall the details. Her garden was her sanctuary, and yet, there had been one corner, hadn't there? A shaded patch tucked near the back fence where no roses ever grew. She used to scowl at it, muttering about how stubborn that patch of dirt was. My pulse quickened. Could that be it? The next morning I drove out to her old house. My cousins hadn't wasted time. Rachel had already staked her claim, and the place was technically hers now. But it was still too soon for renovations, and I knew she wouldn't be caught dead digging in the dirt. The backyard was smaller than I remembered, choked with weeds and overgrowth. The rose bushes stood tall and unruly, petals scattering in the breeze. And there it was, the corner. The same patch of soil where roses had never bloomed. I dropped to my knees, hands shaking, and began to dig with nothing but a rusted trowel left behind. My fingers hit something solid almost immediately. Wood. A small box, its edges rotted but still intact. My breath caught as I pulled it free. Inside was no treasure chest, no glittering jewels, just more papers folded tight. I unfolded them one by one, and my blood ran cold. They weren't family mementos. They were bank records, transaction slips, property titles, all in names I didn't recognize. And stapled to the back of one envelope was a single Polaroid photograph. My grandmother, standing beside a man I had never seen before. His arm was around her shoulders, his smile too wide, too forced. On the back, written in her hand, "If something happens to me, trust no one in this family. Call the number on the last page." The last page wasn't another bank slip. It was a business card. No name, no company, just 3 letters printed in bold black ink. FBI. I sat frozen in the dirt, the laughter of my cousins still echoing in my head. They thought I had been given scraps. They thought I was the failure, the disappointment. But my grandmother had left me something far more dangerous than money. She had left me the truth. And the truth had teeth. The box sat on my kitchen table like a living thing. Every time I glanced at it, the papers inside seemed to hum with secrets. Bank slips, property deeds, records written in names that weren't my grandmother's, or anyone else I knew in the family. Entire assets shifted quietly between hands, tucked under companies with meaningless names. But why had she hidden them from everyone else? Why me? And then there was the Polaroid. That strange man with his arm around her, smiling too hard. I flipped it over again, tracing the words she had written. "If something happens to me, trust no one in this family. Call the number on the last page. Trust no one." The weight of it sank deeper every time I read it. She hadn't just been leaving me a message. She had been warning me. The phrase still haunted me. Look where the roses never bloom. The sewing machine. The note. The roses. The box. One clue had led to another. But surely she hadn't meant for it to end here. I spread out the documents across the table. There had to be something more. Something hidden in plain sight. And that's when I saw it. Some of the property deeds weren't just numbers and legal jargon. They were addresses. Places scattered across Florida, Georgia, even up the East Coast. But one address was different. It was for a warehouse, abandoned for years. And next to it, in my grandmother's handwriting, barely visible in the margin, "Where the roses never bloom." My chest tightened. The garden had only been the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I packed the documents, the Polaroid, and the card marked with 3 letters, FBI. But I wasn't ready to call them yet. Not without seeing for myself. By dawn, I was driving down cracked roads toward the address. The warehouse loomed ahead, rusted and silent, its windows dark like watchful eyes. The air was heavy, thick with dust and the faint smell of rot. My footsteps echoed as I slipped inside, papers clutched to my chest like a shield. Rows of shelves stood abandoned, covered in grime. But tucked near the back was something out of place. A row of sealed crates, newer than everything else around them. I pried one open. My stomach lurched. Inside weren't antiques or forgotten family belongings. They were bags. Heavy, tightly wrapped, stamped with names and numbers. And tucked beneath them stacks of passports. Fake ones. My grandmother hadn't been hiding money. She'd been hiding evidence. And if the FBI's card was real, then she had trusted me to bring it to light. But in that silence I felt it, a shift in the air. I wasn't alone in the warehouse. The warehouse air was still, but my instincts screamed otherwise. I froze, clutching one of the fake passports in my hand. The silence pressed in too heavily, broken only by the drip of water somewhere in the shadows. Then a shuffle. The soft crunch of a boot against concrete. I wasn't alone. I shoved the passport back into the crate and pressed myself against the nearest shelf, my heart pounding like it wanted to rip free from my chest. A beam of light cut through the darkness, a flashlight. It swept across the room, steady, searching. Someone else knew. I stayed hidden as long as I could, but my pulse betrayed me. I shifted, the wood groaned, and the beam snapped toward me. "Who's there?" a voice barked. Deep. Male. I didn't answer. I bolted. The flashlight whipped wildly as heavy footsteps thundered behind me. I sprinted down the aisles, dodging rusted shelves, crates, and debris. The warehouse door loomed ahead, cracked just enough for daylight to bleed in. I burst through it, stumbling into the sunlight, gasping for air. The man didn't follow. Not yet. But I knew whoever he was, he had seen me. And that meant I was now part of something much larger than my grandmother's secrets. Back in my apartment, I spread everything out again. The crates, the fake passports, the financial records. My hands trembled as I pieced it together. This wasn't just hidden money. This was organized, sophisticated, illegal. And my grandmother had known. Had she been part of it? Or had she been trying to stop it? I pulled the FBI card from my pocket, turning it over in my hands. My grandmother's final instruction rang in my ears. If something happens to me, trust no one in this family. The truth hit me like a punch. It wasn't just that she trusted me more than anyone else. It was that she knew the rest of the family was involved. My cousins, my parents, maybe all of them. No wonder they had laughed at the will reading. No wonder they hadn't cared that I got nothing. Because the inheritance they thought they had secured was rotten to the core. I sat in the dim glow of my lamp, the card still in my hand. It was time. With shaking fingers, I dialed the number. And when the voice on the other end answered, I whispered the words I never thought I'd say. My grandmother left me something, and I think you're going to want to see it. The next morning, 2 unmarked black cars pulled up outside my apartment. My neighbors peeked through their curtains, probably thinking I was in some kind of trouble. I wasn't sure they were wrong. 2 agents, crisp suits, sharp eyes, stepped into my living room. They didn't waste time on pleasantries. Within minutes, the crates were open on my table. Documents spread out like a crime scene. One of them, Agent Keller, tapped a fake passport with his pen. Do you know what this is tied to? I shook my head. His jaw tightened. Your grandmother was sitting on evidence of one of the largest underground laundering networks we've been tracking for years. My stomach dropped. Laundering. Millions, maybe billions, funneled through shell companies, offshore accounts, fake identities. And it had been hidden under my nose. The other agent, Ramirez, leaned closer. We think your family may have been directly benefiting. These documents, they're not just evidence. They're proof of collusion. If your grandmother left them to you, it means she trusted you. And it means... He paused. His eyes searched mine. You might be in danger. The words chilled me. Danger? From who? The shadowy man in the warehouse? Or my own family, the ones who laughed in my face during the will reading? I remembered the shuffle of boots in the dark, the beam of the flashlight. Whoever that man was, he hadn't been surprised by what I found. He had been waiting. Keller slid a paper across the table. It was a photo. Blurred, grainy. Surveillance stills. And my blood ran cold. Because staring back at me was my cousin. The same cousin who had mocked me as the family disappointment. The same cousin who had inherited millions of property in Florida. There he was, in the background of an illegal deal. I sat frozen. My grandmother hadn't just been leaving me a clue. She had been pointing me straight into the heart of a conspiracy, one that involved the very people who should have been my family. Now, I was the key witness. Agent Ramirez's voice was firm, almost grim. You've already been seen. You can't go back to your family. From this point on, your life is about to change. The FBI placed me in a safe house for the night, but sleep never came. My mind replayed the image of my cousin, his smirk at the will reading, the cruel laughter as they dismissed me as nothing. But my grandmother, she had trusted me with everything. By morning, Agent Keller returned with news. We intercepted communications, he said, voice grave. Your family knows you have the documents, and they're not planning to let you keep them. My throat went dry. You mean they'd? Yes, Ramirez cut in sharply. They'd rather bury you than risk losing what they've built. The agents arranged a sting operation. My cousins had been sloppy, arranging a family meeting at one of the Florida estates, the same property they bragged about inheriting. It was bait, a trap. But what they didn't know was that I'd be walking in wired, and the FBI would be listening to every word. When I entered the mansion, the air was heavy with expensive perfume and deceit. My aunt's fake smile greeted me. "Oh, sweetheart," she cooed. "We didn't mean to be so harsh at the will reading. Family can be cruel, but we're still blood." My cousin stepped out from behind her. His eyes narrowed. "You found something, didn't you?" The room fell silent. I swallowed, feigning confusion. "What do you mean?" He smirked. "Don't play dumb. Grandma always had her favorites. And if she left you something, it wasn't that piece of junk sewing machine." The mask was off. His voice dripped with contempt. "Hand it over. All of it. Or I promise you, this family won't have room for you anymore." Before I could answer, hidden earpieces crackled in my ear. The FBI agents were listening, waiting. But in that moment, as I looked at my cousin's face, twisted with greed, arrogance, betrayal, I realized something. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about property. This was about power. My family hadn't just betrayed me. They had betrayed my grandmother's legacy. And I wasn't about to let that go. The tension in that Florida estate could have cut glass. My cousin's hand twitched at his side, as though he wanted to grab me by the collar. My aunt leaned forward, voice low and venomous. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You've always been weak. Grandma spoiled you. Now give us what belongs to us." I forced a trembling smile. "You really want it?" Their eyes lit up with hunger. They thought they'd won. What they didn't know was that my shirt button held a micro camera, transmitting everything to the FBI van parked down the street. I pulled out a folded piece of paper from my pocket, a decoy copy of the documents hidden in the sewing machine. My cousin snatched it greedily, eyes scanning. "This is it," he hissed. "This proves it all." But before he could finish, a voice thundered. "FBI. Nobody move." The doors crashed open. Dozens of agents swarmed in, weapons drawn. My cousin dropped the papers, stumbling back. My aunt shrieked, hands in the air, while uncles and cousins scrambled like cockroaches caught in the light. The lead agent barked. "You are under arrest for fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy to conceal federal crimes." Handcuffs clicked shut one by one. The same relatives who had laughed at me just days ago now stood trembling, faces pale with terror. As they were dragged out, my cousin twisted his neck to glare at me. "You think this makes you better than us?" he spat. I met his eyes, my voice steady for the first time in years. "No. It just makes me free." When the dust settled, Agent Keller handed me the original documents back. His voice softened. "Your grandmother trusted you for a reason. She knew the truth would destroy them, but save you." And for the first time since the will reading, I felt it. Relief. Closure. Justice.